The number 5 fuel injector is suspect. So that's 1, 2, 3, and this is 4, 5, 6. So you can see this plug right here is hooked up to that fuel injector, and the top of which is back right over here on the other side of the plug. So you got the top of the cap over the fuel injector right there, the fuel injector going diagonally in this way into the engine, and the plug right here. So these electrical connectors are fragile because they've been hot and whatnot, but right there is the tab, and what you need to do is gently push the tab that way towards the 2 wires, and then very gently remove it so we don't break that clip. And that's like that. So that's what that looks like. Now we can shoot resistance into the fuel injector itself. Right here I've got the multimeter, and I've got it set to resistance ohms, the omega sign there. And you can see right here, you touch these two together, and there's perfect continuity right there. But if I touch it to either sides of plastic, if you look at the multimeter, there's no continuity. That's just open. 0.L is just open. There's no continuity because this is plastic, doesn't conduct electricity. If I put it to 2 sides of metal, like there, you can see that the leads aren't touching each other, but there's perfect continuity, or almost perfect. Alright, and then there's perfect. So we can run resistance right through the positive side and negative side of each injector and see how they're checking out. So here's a known good one. We know that I've got fire in the number 6 hole, so I'm holding one lead to one side of the male connector in that fuel injector and the other lead to the other side. And it doesn't matter. Right now I've got the black lead on the left and the positive lead on the right, but when you're checking resistance, that doesn't matter. I got 13.8 or 13.9, and then I can take them and I can swap them around. Like I say, it doesn't matter. I can put the red one on the left now and the black one on the right. This is another known good one. This fuel injector is the number 4 fuel injector, and if I can hold it steady on those 2 male electrical prongs coming out of the fuel injector, I've got 13.9, which is exactly what I had on number 6. So number 4 and number 6, the 2 cylinders that are firing, if I can hold the leads on the terminal ends, they keep falling off. But if I can hold it steady, there's 14 right there, with 13.9, 13.9. I'm guessing 13.9 is in range because number 4 and number 6 work, and they're both 13.9. So what about number 5? Number 5 is the one that wasn't firing. If I take number 5 and I put one lead on that end and one lead on that end, and I hold it, it's open. There's no continuity at all. I reposition the leads, got them on the 2 probes for the fuel injector. So, I mean, that's it. We're done. I was going to look at wires. If this shot good, I expected it to shoot good. These fuel injectors usually don't go bad, but this one's wide open, so I need to change the fuel injector. So I got to go over to Ford and drop, I think, $70 on a new fuel injector, or go to AutoZone and get something from China. So I think I'll go to Ford because I'm going to try to put 1,000,000 miles on this Ford Escape. It's a good thing we ran this car out of gas, because now there's no fuel pressure in that fuel rail, and I can go ahead and just take that right out of there without worrying about pressurized fuel spraying everywhere, which would be a bad thing, because remember earlier we took out the fuel pump relay and ran the engine out of gas with no fuel pump. Here's what I figured out on this. It seemed like it was attached pretty good right there, but all it is this 90-degree angle right here is wedged underneath this bracket. So you got this large bracket here, and you got this bolt hole for your upper intake that needs to get in right through there. So they moved it, they just kind of wedged that right in there, and what you need to do is just kind of pull on that until it comes out. And it's kind of a pain to get back in there, but we got to make sure that we put this elbow right there. That elbow needs to be tucked under the bracket because the bolt for the intake has to go on this side, so you definitely can't try to reinstall it like that. There's no way. So we got to remember to shove that back in there the way Ford had it, but for right now we want it out of the way. So that's pretty much out of the way. And yeah, there is a bolt right there, and a bolt right there, and a bolt right there, and a bolt right there. Take those 4 out and the fuel rail should be able to lift up right out of there. I should mention that I did check resistance on not just this bank of fuel injectors, but the far bank of fuel injectors as well. Number 1, 2, 3, and the resistance was all either 13.8 or 13.9 on all 3. So 13.8 or 9 on all of those, 13.9, 13.9, and this fuel injector had just open, no resistance whatsoever when we checked for ohms, checked for resistance. So it was a real struggle getting this rail off. I removed the 4 bolts that go in the brackets there, and with the 4 bolts, you know, you could wiggle it, it was loose, but it took a lot of wiggling and a lot of lifting up from the driver's side, you know, and from the driver's side I was able to finally get it to break free, and now it's loose of 4 of the fuel injectors. When we popped it off, one of the O-rings fell down into the valley of the engine, but we can fish it out of there. It's really got nowhere to go since I plugged all these guys up. We didn't want them to go to there, but like this O-ring got away and this O-ring got away, so we got to find both those O-rings. I found one of them already, but this O-ring stayed put, this O-ring stayed put. There's still 2 injectors hanging on, and this is one of them, and this is the other. So a little bit of a struggle, and the only thing holding on, once you get those 4 bolts off there, the only thing holding on is just the O-rings. So what we're going to do is we're going to see if we can get these last 2 to pop loose. A little bit of fuel leaking out, but like I said, it's not under pressure. There's the last 2. Okay, so with all those out, you can kind of look inside and make sure there's no O-rings inside, and there's not. They're bright orange. The ones on the top side are bright orange. So this can just be set aside, and then this is the one that we're changing. I put a little red X on it so I wouldn't get confused, but that's the number 5 fuel injector, the one that ohms checked bad. So here we go. There's one of them, and the other one has got to be down there somewhere, so we'll get a flashlight, we'll look for that. Alright, so we were able to fish out all of the orange O-rings. 2 of them had popped out. One of them was just right down there, and one of them found its way right down there, so we had to get a small wire and fish it out with some 32 thousandths safety wire. For them, I figured I'd go ahead and shoot these wires just so I can give you, in uncertain terms, exactly what color wire it is that supplies the ground to each of the 6 injectors. We'll pull this back off the computer, and I'll set it, just pulling it straight out like that, setting it straight back like that, and get something to hold it in place like that. Okay, so I can work with that. And now what you want to do is an old flight line trick. You want to get some 32 thousandths safety wire, which is right here. And if you don't have any, just go on eBay and type in .032 safety wire. You'll be able to get some of that. And if you want, get a roll of 20 thousandths and a roll of 41 thousandths as well, because it's good to have around. I'll show you what I'm going to do with that in a second. You can see what I've done with the 32 thousandths safety wire. I've got it wrapped tightly around the lead there, the positive lead, but for resistance it doesn't matter which one's positive, which one's negative. And also this lead here, I've got safety wire wrapped around it. I've got safety wire going into the large plug that plugs into the computer, and I've got safety wire going into the ground side of the fuel injector harness. Now remember, on each of these plugs that hook up to your fuel injectors, there's a red wire and there's a colored wire, and different variety of colors for that one, but it's the variety of colors, that wire, that's providing the ground, and it's that wire that comes from your computer, so your computer can signal your fuel injector to fire. You see right there, I've got good continuity between those two, and if I pull this one out, now you can see I've lost continuity. That's open. Number 5 injector is this one. It is a tan colored wire with a thin black stripe. I don't know how you can see it, but that's what it is. That is the wire going from the computer to the number 5 fuel injector, and that wire just shot good, and my fuel injector shot bad, so I'm going to go to Ford, get a new fuel injector, and take the family out to breakfast because they look like they're ready to go. You guys ready to go?
No. Yeah. Yes.
Also, with safety wire and safety wire pliers, you can do fun things like this. On the front of this 66 Sunbeam Alpine, I fabricated a chin spoiler, but it's just a rectangle piece of flat stock that I've got welded to the front of the car there, and then the end pieces I can remove with these 2 bolts going into nut plates, and I've got those safety wires because I don't want them to fall out, because this is actually a pretty good gauge of steel as well, and I've got that cut and bent to shape, and I can make different shapes, different lengths, different pieces, and then just bolt them on like that, and safety wire the bolts so they don't vibrate out, because I wouldn't want to lose those pieces going down the highway. Alright, starting from number 1, which right there is the plug for the number 1 cylinder, and that's the plug for the number 2, number 3, number 4, 5 we already did, and number 6. So I'm plugged in to the number 1, and I've already discovered that it's the 4th hole over from the left. From the computer to the number 1 fuel injector is a brown wire, no stripe. Kind of a, I don't know, caramel color, I guess, light brown. Okay, so now I've got my lead in the number 2 plug, and number 2 I've got continuity going to this is the top row now, and it's the 4th from the left on the top row. So remember, if you're checking pins on the computer side, it's going to be the 4th from the right on the top row, because you're looking right there, you're looking at a mirror image of that. If you were to take that and plug it in, then 4th from the left there would be 4th from the right up there in the top, if you want to check for a recessed pin or something like that in your actual computer. But we got good continuity from right there to right there. That's a good reading, so that wire is good. And now we'll check and see what color that wire is. 4th from the left. The first hole doesn't have a wire, so the first hole is an empty hole right there, and the second one looks like it's black, and the third one is empty, and the 4th hole is this white wire right here. And the plug to number 3 fuel injector, I've got good continuity, and it is back on the 2nd row, 2nd from the top there, and it is the 1, 2, 3, 4, it's the 5th hole over. Keep in mind that that 2nd hole is vacant. There's no wire going to the 2nd one, but rather than counting wires on the back side, I found it's easier just to count positions. So it's the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th position from the left. the wire triggering the number 3 fuel injector is either dark brown or black, but it has 2 yellow stripes. And the number 4 fuel injector plug is going to the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th position. 5th position from the left, top row. The number 4 fuel injector wire is a brown wire with 2 blue stripes. We already covered number 5. Number 6 is top row again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 from the left on top row. And the number 6 injector wire is a green wire with 2 orange stripes. Alright, there's 13.7. This is my brand new fuel injector from Ford that I just bought, and it is going in the number 5 position. Not that it really matters much. While I was at Ford, I asked for new O-rings as well. I was going to replace the other 5, but they can't sell me 5 top ones and 5 bottom ones. I think they can only sell the top ones, and they come in a kit of 10, something like that, and it was 26 bucks for 10 of them. So what I did was I removed the other 5 injectors, and I took the top orange O-ring off of each one and the bottom green O-ring off of each one, and I cleaned all the O-rings separately and with brake cleaner, and then let them dry, and then lubed them up with just Vaseline petroleum jelly, and then I cleaned all of the fuel injectors that didn't have the O-rings on them. I cleaned those with B12 Chem Tool, and then let them dry, and then I put the greased up Vaseline coated O-rings onto each of the injectors and popped them in. When they pop in, it's got a little raised portion right there and on the other side, so it'll only go in one way. So this number 5, I have to install it like this. It might let me install it like this, 180 out, but of course that would be a terrible idea because you want your harness to hook up to it. So all I need to do now is get some Vaseline and lubricate the O-rings on this new fuel injector from Ford. Get that nice and slippery, and then drop that in, line it up with the grooves right there, and it just pops right in there. The fuel rail is tricky because you've got to line up all of the injectors. Now if they were all pointing straight up and down like a 4-cylinder engine, it would be easy, but since everything's at a different angle from each other, it makes this really tricky. So I'm going to need 2 hands just to try to get them all lined up and started. And then once they're all lined up and started, I think it's just a matter of kind of wiggling it down and pressuring it down to get them all seated over those large orange O-rings. Actually, that wasn't too bad at all. I was really kind of surprised how easily that went on. Starting at the driver's side, I just kind of, use my finger to line them all up, to kind of push them into the fuel rail receptacles, and one by one, starting on that side, I was able to work the rail down over to that side, getting them all lined up, and once they were all lined up, push down with just minimal force, and it seated all the way. And I can tell that because where the bolts go in, the 1, 2, 3, 4 bolts, it's all lined up. So I'll get those bolts and install them right now. Okay, so the fuel rail is bolted down, and now I want to leak check it by turning on the fuel pump. So I'm going to have to plug this relay back in, which had earlier disabled my fuel pump, and now the fuel pump is back and ready to go. And if I turn the key on, I can hear the fuel pump buzz and whir. You probably can't hear it in the video. Buzz, boop. Buzz, boop. Alright, so the fuel pump's coming on for a little bit and then shutting off. And I did notice that my fuel rail, which was room temperature, became cool to the touch. So I'm positive now that I've got this pressurized with fuel, and I don't see any leaks at all. So it's got a lot of fuel pressure in there. It's all bolted down, of course. The 4 bolts are secured, are all in there and torqued down. I torqued those to about 89 inch-pounds because they're the same size bolts as go to the upper intake manifold, and I looked up online and I believe it was 89 inch-pounds for the upper intake manifold. And if I'm wrong on 89 inch-pounds, then I'll post that in the comments of this video, because hopefully I'm not lying to you guys right now. It was a few days ago that I looked that up. I didn't write it down. But I don't see any leaks, which is good, because you really don't want a constant fuel leak coming out of either end of either in these injectors. You've got 6 injectors and 2 ends on each, so you've got 12 potential leak points, and it's important to check them all. I'll double check with a flashlight right now, but it would be pressurized fuel, so I think I would definitely notice by now, or at least smell it, and I don't. So far so good. Alright, so I've got the multimeter set now for voltage DC, and you can see if I plug in to the red wire side of each fuel injector harness, there's 12 volts at that one, there's 12 volts at that one, there's 12 volts at that one, and let's see which one is red on this one. Okay, now I need the other side there. 12 volts at that one, 12 volts at that one, and 12 volts at that one. Again, these fuel injectors are a solid 12 volts at all times, as long as the key is on, and I've got the key in the run position right now. Okay, so I'm ready to get this harness back on the fuel rail, and if you remember, when I was taking it all apart, there's this one 90-degree elbow right here, and it needs to get underneath this bracket, and you need to force it because it's really tight. Probably need some Vaseline on there, but no, you got it. I was going to say the Vaseline will lubricate it, but just slide in there. Alright, so that's in there now, and without that being in there, you wouldn't have access to that bolt hole which the upper intake needs to secure to. So the harness is all in place now, and I can carefully clip all of my electrical connectors in place. Alright, so those two I felt a good snap as they snapped in. This one not so much. Why isn't that one locking? Did I break that one? Alright, that's locked in now. It just didn't click, but it's locked. Alright, this one's tricky. Not a whole lot of room for number 1. Okay, snap, that one's in place. Number 2. I broke number 2. Yep, broke it. I'm not happy about that. And number 3. And that was my fault. When I was pushing down on number 2, I was actually pushing on the button that unlocks it, and I broke the button that unlocks it. So now I got to take that one back out, get the broken button tab out, and that one now needs to be secured with a zip tie. You don't want to push down on that. If I hadn't been pushed down on that, I wouldn't have snapped it off of there. As I said earlier in this video, those guys are brittle. Yeah. Okay, number 4 is clipped on there. Number 5 is clipped on there. Number 6 is clipped on there. Number 1 is clipped on there. And number 2 is zip tied. And number 3 is clipped on there. So number 2, I don't know if you can tell, but I actually ran the zip tie through where the broken tab was. and so it runs through the plug, around, and then just around the bottom of the fuel injector there. But when I pull on the plug now, it can't come out. That zip tie is holding it securely, so it's fine, and it's not in the way of anything. It's not taking up any more space than any of the others, so I'll still be able to get the upper intake on there. Now right here there is a little plastic piece right there that just fell. This plastic piece right here secures the wire harness to the fuel rail on the driver's side, and I was just about to just press it right into the fuel rail bracket to secure it, and it popped out on me and almost fell down the number 6 intake port. So that gave me a scare, but I mean, it just missed the intake port and it went elsewhere. So I put my my rags back in the ports, because that's a terrible thing to do. And anyway, there's a hole right there for it. It goes in that hole there, and it looks like it just slides in to a groove right here in the bottom of this harness. Oh, I get it. It's broken. It's cracked. That's why it came apart. So mine is broken apart right there. But what I can do is I can put this back in. I'll put this back in where it's split, and then I'll get electrical tape and I'll tape it all back together so it doesn't fall out like it just did on me before. But again, don't drop stuff down your intake ports. Okay, so I've got this back in there where it goes, and I've got this all taped up with electrical tape where it had broken before, so that's holding it solid now. And then that just shoves down in that hole. And doesn't hold it at all. So here comes another zip tie for that. There's zip tie number 2. Ran it right around there. Let's tuck it down out of the way. And that's just securing this bundle the way it was originally secured, so that the fuel injector harness is now secured to the fuel injector rail.